It's recording.
We just usually leave a little bit of time, a little bit of lag at the start because there's sometimes overwrites. Okay, welcome everybody to this afternoon's session of the Digital Transformation in Government 2023 conference. We're on day 3 and in the afternoon of of all of our presentations. And this afternoon, we're happy to invite to get a presentation from Najah El-Gharib, a Ph.D. candidate in Digital Transformation and Innovation at the University of Ottawa. So she's her research area focuses on process mining and robotic process automation, and how the two technologies can be integrated within organizations. She holds a bachelor's degree in computer science as of 2017 from the same university, where she also received her master's degree in 2019, and her thesis topic was using process mining technology for understanding user behavior in SaaS applications. Since 2016, Najah has been involved with several organizations in Ottawa and nationally to teach high school girls computer science and inspire them to consider STEM education. She's a computer science high school educator and mentor, and as an IEEE student member since 2015. The presentation will start with a useful problem definition, followed by an introduction to process mining and robotic process automation, and it'll be followed by research questions, methodologies, and the approach adopted in the research. And then finally, there'll be a description of the Canadian process mining community. Welcome, Najah. I'm going to hand it over to you for a presentation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks for all the attendees for being here this almost late afternoon for, I guess, probably the last presentation of today. Yeah, I'll be speaking about data-driven robotic process automation, exploiting process mining techniques, as this is my research topic for my PhD thesis. So for today's agenda, I'll give a problem definition on why did I chose this topic and how did my research started, and then introduction to process mining, robotic process automations. Then I'll deep dive into my research questions for my PhD, as long as my proposed approach, a methodology, and what I'm trying to solve. And lastly, I'll speak about this initiative that I started in January 2023 on the Canadian process mining community. So problem definition. So as we all know, there is kind of a race for digital transformation initiatives across organizations and all different industries currently. And organizations are also moving towards fixing their processes, looking into processes, enhancements, process redesign, automations, and all sort of initiatives to improve their processes so they can cut costs, improve their efficiency, increase their return on investment, and also that will enable them to drive their digital transformation plans. But as probably most of you know or heard, I'm sure, that in the last 5 years, there has been an increase in the adoption of robotic process automation technologies, or what we call RPA. And this is actually changing the way we are working, changing the way things are happening around us. And a lot of automation is coming in place in order to improve processes, reduce time to get things done, and so on. So what is actually interesting here is understanding those processes is actually the key to automating them, and it's the key to improve them as well, which actually bring me to discuss this topic about process mining and RPA, because in 2018 is the first time this terminology came in on how process mining can drive robotic process automations and how can actually it supports those implementations. Currently, there's a lot of guesswork when we're trying to understand how our processes look like. Either we do workshops, documentations, we talk to people, we try to understand, we do a little bit of guesswork because processes are actually in our minds sometimes. And then we try to understand, okay, this is, I think, how my process look like. And then we try to automate it. And then there's a lot of failures along the way, a lot of challenges. So this is what actually drive me to discuss this research about process mining and RPA. And that's why I will deep dive into first talking about what is process mining in more details. So process mining is actually collection of techniques that leverage event log data to extract insights based on event logs or transactions that have been recorded in your information systems. So we are all interacting with information systems and applications every day, every minute around us, whether we're doing some online order, whether we are actually requesting putting a request from a government, we're trying to purchase something, we're trying to apply for a university, apply for a job, and so on. So all these informations they're actually recorded in whether it's legacy systems, enterprise applications, CRM, databases, applications, and so on. So all our clicks and actions are actually recorded somehow in these systems, what we call into event logs. So we work on actually extracting those event logs from information systems. And then we start our process mining techniques where we do a lot of data pre-processing that is required to, whether it's filtering noise, removing some noise, or actually doing a lot of probably wrangling into the data to bring it to a format that we can use for process mining. And then we work on building process maps to generate insights about our processes. This will actually help us drive whether it's process discovery, conformance checking, process improvement, continuous monitoring for your processes, and also process simulations. So process mining is actually a data-driven approach. It's based on facts and it's based on the data to help us look into our processes, how they're executed in reality, and drive insights to better improve them. I want to highlight that the field has shifted quite over the last few years from just looking at historical and more descriptive data about our processes or descriptive analytics into more predictive process mining, into more simulations, continuous improvement, a lot of it about responsible process mining. So the field has seen a big increase over the last few years. To recently this year, there was the first Gartner quadrant for process mining. As this technology, it's actually capable to have its own quadrant, and it's actually getting a lot of attraction across all industries, all processes. So if I look a little bit deeper into process mining, we start by event logs, where we really require three main fields. I'm looking at user ID, who executed the process, the event, what step what step in my process was executed, and a timestamp, which is when the step was executed, in addition to other resources that could be there. That's what we call event logs. So we start by extracting those logs. We do a lot of cleanup, data pre-processing. This is where we spend 80% of our time. A lot of, probably most of you know, a lot of the data analysis requires a lot of pre-processing techniques. And then we work on importing those to process mining tools, which will generate process module based on data. And this is exactly one of the, for example, from my master's degree, when I worked on pre-processing techniques, this was kind of the process module was discovered. So this is what we call a discovery process mining. Then when it comes to enhancements work as when I discover my process module, I take some actions to improve my processes, and then I run process mining again, and then it will give me to a new process mining module based on my enhancements and the actions I've taken to improve my process. Then it brings me to conformance checking, is when I'm actually checking whether my as-is process module that's been discovered based on data comply with my process module that's designed in place. For example, the BPM model I have for my HR process, as an example. So why do we do process mining? This says here, image, probably picture from Ottawa. And if I think about how can we get to the store, I think about this is my process module and how the path I should follow to get to the store. And then I look at these footsteps here, and then this is what we call our event logs, because in reality, this is how people are getting actually to the store. They're following like a small shortcut and then getting to the store. So this brings me to bring up, okay, this is my discovered process module, and this is my actually process model on how things should be executed in reality, but they're not followed. So this is just a small picture, but think about the larger procurement, finance processes, HR, admission to universities, and so on. Cool. So this will bring me to speak about processes, tasks, user interaction, because this will be relevant to robotic process automations. So if we take an example of a loan process instant, which has 5 tasks, in this case, we have check application, check background, SaaS application, underwrite, and approve offer. And in this case, for example, I'll have my loan ID as a unique identifier for each of the process instance. If I take one particular task and I dig deeper into exactly what was done within assessing an application, for example, the worker has opened Outlook, Adobe, and then did some work, and then came back to an application, and so on. So this is what we look at a deeper level, which is more of a task versus an event level. So this is a lower level of granularity, which will bring me to talk a bit more about what is in the terms of task mining and user interaction. So analyzing task UI logs or user interaction logs with process mining techniques. So first we have the user workstation, and employee is interacting with the workstation. Then we conduct the data pre-processing, and then we do process mining techniques to discover those actions. So I'll dig deeper into each of those steps. So we start by having the task mining props are deployed on user workstations, in which they track how user is interacting with the different applications. So it's basically kind of recording the screen to understand the steps the worker has performed to execute a certain process. This will generate raw UI data logs based on those clicks along the applications and the screen. Then the second step will be the data pre-processing, where all this data is actually put in place for pre-processing, and the task mining data pre-processing engine actually looks at those raw data UI logs. We do a lot of the filtering approaches that are required, and then that is pulled into process mining tools, where the pre-processed UI logs are fed into these different tools, whether we have a lot of commercial tools and open source tools out there in the market. So a lot of that we're mainly using open source tools in my research. And then this data will be used to discover the different clicks and the different steps employee has taken along the way to execute a process. So when I speak about robotic process automation, UI event logs are very critical, because this is what's required for my RPA development. So what is robotic process automations? I'll probably refer to it as RPA. Okay, so RPA is actually an emerging technology that allows organization to automate repetitive tasks that are done by workers along the way to reduce time for executing a process, reduce errors, and so on. So basically, those bots, what we call bots or RPA robots, utilize the user interaction and capture the data, manipulate application just like a human do. So as simple as sending an email, reading an attachment, copy and paste data from one application to another, or one form to another. There are 2 different types of RPA, the attended automation and unattended automation. Attended automation is a case where robots collaborate with a human to do the work, and unattended is a standalone robot that perform the workflows without humans. So a simple automatable task, as simple as copying data from an Excel sheet to a form and submitting it. This is a very simple task that an RPA bot can do. So why do we actually do robotic process automations? I'm probably sure most of you heard about the term, or probably are doing it at your organization. So why this technology had emerged recently, it's to reduce errors, cycle time reduction, as well as have more consistency in processes, standardization, cost efficiency, probably freeing your employees to do other work that is just probably copy pasting some information. They can spend more time on other type of work and so on. And this was relevant in all type of processes, whether it's, as I said, HR, procurement, more type of finance, or all sort of finance processes, admission, applications, and so on. So, and which processes are actually suitable for RPA? It's more when I look into those repetitive processes that are repeated a lot with very low number of variations, or more structured and also rule-based with a very little number of exceptions. These are the most ones suitable for automation, because I don't have to reconfigure so many different exceptions when I'm actually building my script. And then whenever there's more variability, that will affect actually my implementation and how I monitor my processes after. So how do we actually conduct an RPA project? So we determine which process we want to automate, and then we dig deeper into determining which routines are good candidates for automation based on the criteria, for example, that I mentioned in the previous slide. Then we module the selected routines in the form of a flowchart diagram to define the behavior of how the bot should be executing my process, develop each module by generating code, and then deploy the software bots in their environment. And then lastly, maintain those by monitoring my bots or my processes in order to fix any upcoming errors. And typically, the first 3 steps is where a lot of trial and error happen or is repeated, because I actually wanted to continue to understand my process in detail. So most cases we conduct a lot of interviews or workshops, talk to the people. What do you do after this step? How do you execute this? What are the different exceptions? What are the different applications you interact with during one process execution, and so on. So this is very time consuming, and it's mainly leading to a lot of failures in those implementations, since we do a lot of the guesswork. It's not based on the data and the system and so on. So classical RPA analysis and deployment typically start, we have information system and we interact with those information systems or application. We do the analysis to discover those routines that we want to automate through interviews, documentation, workshops. Probably most of you have probably been in one of those workshops to understand a process for process assessment or process review. And in most cases, sometimes our documentation are not up to date, but they include how my process should actually be executed, not the reality. So, and then we do a lot of that work upfront, and then we build our scripts and code, and we do the deployment of the RPA script in order to let the bots run. But with this approach, it's pretty time consuming. Also, it's error prone and difficult to maintain. Probably every time there's a little change in my process, I probably have to redo interviews and questionnaires and workshops, and then I have to arrange to get everybody in a room for a meeting and so on. So all these are little steps, but they accumulate into what's called more like time consuming and difficult, as I said, difficult to maintain. What the newer approach of embedding process mining and RPA will bring me to a more, what we see here on the figure. So we conduct analyses, but for the interactions are actually recorded in what we call user interaction logs, where we do automated discovery of those processes and data. And also, in addition to the analysis that we do on those data sets and those discovered processes, to more discover those routines based on data for RPA, do deployment, and compile those into RPA scripts that deploy and then run my bots in production. This approach is more data-driven, objective, and shortened timeframes to get all the data that I need. So this is where my research comes in, and I'll speak about it in a bit, that this is where I am actually focusing on using process mining techniques to discover those automation opportunities or automation routines as well. So this brings me to talking about from the research side of things, my research questions and my methodology and the proposed method that I'm working on solving over the next 2 years. So as I started my research, one of the critical steps is to understand what is actually happening in the domain right now from a research perspective, so I can work on things that I would fill the gap where there is more research required to solve a problem. So we start by conducting what we call a systematic literature review or a scan of all the research that has been done in the field over the last years. And given that process mining and robotic process automation has emerged as of 2018, so my search were over since 2018 up until now. So I mainly looked into what you see here at the bottom is what we call the query to do research across all research databases. And what I focused on looking at those papers or publications that cover process mining or process discovery and any keywords related to robotic process automations, RPA, user interaction, task mining, intelligent automation as well. And this was designed to answer my 3 main research questions that I have here, which are how are process mining techniques applied to accelerate or improve the robotic process automation implementation. My research question 2 was which tools are used both to apply process mining and RPA in an integrated way. And question number 3 was what are those challenges encountered when combining these 2 technologies together. And what I want to highlight is on the tools is a lot of the recently in the market, we saw a lot of the tools have been actually integrating process mining and automation. For example, UiPath, there's like Salonis, other tools are actually embedding process mining and RPA into their platforms to help use both technologies, in addition to open source tools that we have in place based on the research that has been done in the field. And my results, compiling all my results and doing a lot of the analyses on what's out there, one of the findings or one of the things I saw there has been a really steady increase in the number of publications, the domain, and the number of research that's been done in this space in collaboration with industry. Most of it is being actually applied in real applications at the moment. So in the last, with a very peak in the 2022, that indicates a very increase in interest across combining those 2 technologies. So analysis of my results, basically I looked into extracting techniques and algorithms, applications, tools, and then the challenges, which I'll cover a little bit more the challenges in the next slide. So based on my results of all the analyses that's been done, I actually extracted all the different steps that we would go to apply process mining on RPA projects. So it starts by step 1, which is interaction with the information system. Step 2, recording those interactions. Step 3, generating those user interaction logs. Step 4, pre-processing, which go into 3 different steps, identifying those segments, and then identify candidate routines for automation and select those those routines that are suitable for automation. And they could happen in parallel as well. And then we go into more using process mining techniques to do process discovery, then process analyses, RPA configuration scripts, and then we go implementation, monitor, and sustain RPA implementations. The results of the papers focused a lot on the first phase of the pre-processing. A lot of the work has been done on how can I pre-process event logs, because in one case, one employee could execute a particular task in one way. For example, the copy paste could even differ between one employee and another, which cell they copy first, which cell they copy second, where they do the paste. So there is a lot of little variations in those clicks. And this is what we have to work on doing, finding those segmentations and candidate routines for automation. Also, a lot of the work, some work has started in monitoring my processes with RPA in place. Because think about when you do those automations, there are new ways that employee have to work, because now my process, part of it is being executed by a bot, part of it has to be still done by an employee. So there is this process that have employees and RPA in place, and I need to monitor my process from start to and to make sure there's no deadlocks or more waiting time and so on. I'll cover the challenges in a little bit more over, but I basically extracted all the challenges, our process mining challenges, RPA challenges, and the intersection of the two technologies, those challenges where they actually are applied for both technologies. In terms of tools, since this is more research-based, as a lot of the open source tools are used, for example, there's Prom and Apromore, open source, and on the commercial side, there's UiPath, Salonis, Disco, that were mainly used in all my findings. So if we look a little bit deeper into those challenges, we find that the process mining challenges include a lot of the noise handling, a lot of the dealing with complex event logs. If I'm getting event logs from 10 different source systems, I'm putting it together into one system, one data set, managing the granularity, compiling those event logs, also the user interactions and collecting high quality data are considered a lot of these upfront pre-processing challenges on the data. And in the RPA side, a lot of the challenges were on identifying routines that are suitable for automation, human monitoring. One bot fails, how can we react to that very quickly? Automating processes with many different variations. As I said, unstructured processes or the ones that have high variability bring more challenges to my RPA implementation. And also developing those multiple dependent robots and so on that side of automation. And then on the RPA and process mining side of things, if I look at the intersection of these challenges, a lot of it is on recording user interaction logs. As I said, a lot of the papers focused on that. This brings me to generating event logs from user interaction, filtering noise, finding frequent patterns, as clicking along screens and applications can get really granular and really messy with a large data set. Extracting those routines, segmenting event logs, and simplifying event logs. So, and one of the main approaches in this field that's been now developed and we're using as well, based on other research, is the robotic process mining approach, which actually works a lot on simplifying those event logs and working on segmentations. So for example, after we do the recording, we generate those UI logs into, put them in a data source or database. Then we start those segmentation techniques to discover the different tasks, the order how the tasks were executed. And then we start simplification techniques which will generate simplified task traces. And then candidate routines that are identified. We look at the frequency of those candidate routines for each different variations to have discover those subroutines, discover the processes from start to end. This is where we apply a lot of the process mining techniques in place. We work as well on aggregating the discovered processes and more compiling those results into RPA scripts. In most cases, we're using Python to generate those RPA scripts. Then we're embedding them into RPA tools. Process mining is used to discover those routines along the way as well. I'll move into my proposed method or work in progress that I actually have started. So the starting point was actually to understand what's out there in the reality and start exploring the different techniques that I wanted to work on. So after my approach will be more of a method that will constitute of many different steps, and along the way that each step will have an input, an output, and many interactions along the way. So first thing will be discovering the problem identification and formulation, which will actually next be process selection, which process I want to automate. I am planning to start interviews with different industry practitioners to generate those problems that they actually find from implementing RPA and process mining along the way. In addition to the problems I discovered from the literature review, I want to focus on the problems that are discovered as well from real applications. Gathering requirements, generating those data sets, selecting tools is a very important step at the moment. We all probably struggle sometimes with which tool is the best to use. And then applying process mining techniques on the pre-processing data set, process mining, process analyses, and then I actually focus on identifying the process stages that can be automated and looking at those automations, embedding them, and then monitoring my end-to-end process when RPA is actually in place. How can I use process mining techniques to do the monitoring approach? In addition to discovering when, for example, looking at which processes can be automated, looking at short-term, long-term approaches, what should I automate first, second, based on many different criteria. Lastly, what does this actually mean to everyone and to all those looking to deploy RPA, process mining, and RPA in place? So process mining is a key enabler for RPA automations for several reasons, which I'm highlighting only 6 here. It really provides this in-depth end-to-end process understanding about how my processes are actually running and make sure automations deliver results. It helps improve processes before automating them to get the maximum benefit. Secondly, identify the most valuable, impactful places to implement automations. Of course, this is very, very important. The continuous monitoring approach and continuous improvement for my processes is one of those big benefits as well, which will help build an automation program based on facts, data, and ongoing measurement. Will help you during your RPA strategy or implementations on how can I actually improve my processes along the way, as well as scale that to more processes. It links between business rules and automation assessment, which drive better outcomes for my automations. So, and then I'll speak about the last initiative, which is the Canadian Process Mining Community. So I was inspired when I attended the process mining summer school in Germany. I was one of the only students out of 100 students I was the only one from North America. And there was a big community in Europe for the technology, as this is where it was actually generated there. So as of January 2023, I started this initiative with the support of 2 professors from University of Ottawa, my supervisor, Professor Daniel Amut, and professor from York University as well. So this community brings together professors, students, and researchers in the field of process mining. We also have some people from industry that are interested in collaborating and understanding and learning about the technology. We are a group of 27 members now across Canada from all the different universities listed here, and we're working on a variety of research topics. For example, RPA, decision mining, queue mining, change management, applications in construction industry, applications in public sector. I also want to add the healthcare space. So if you're interested in joining the group to either collaborate or work with students on projects, collaborate with research initiatives, please feel free to join our community on LinkedIn. With that being said, I would like to thank everybody for being here today. I hope this session was insightful. Feel free to connect with me. And if you'd like to learn more about my research, what I'm planning to do, and my collaborations with industry practitioners as I'm conducting use cases with real applications. So feel free to contact me for any questions. I'm happy to chat more. Thank you.
I think I forgot to mention at the beginning of the presentation, there's a Q&A button at the bottom if you want to have any questions for Najah. Okay, so I guess, wow, that's a great presentation. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Quite a lot to I guess it's almost like a can we think of it as almost like a self-correcting RPA based on data and transactions, I guess, eh? No?
Yeah, for sure. Based on data-driven approach to actually plan your RPA implementations.
Excellent. So this is I guess the right now I guess you're just you're at Ottawa U and looking to your PhD candidate, I guess. How would you sort of address the fact that, say, sometimes this applies extremely well for systems that are burdened and that are slow, or that there's issues around process. How do we look at this in the long term in terms of, say, if and keep things up to date in terms of if process needs to change, if the systems underlying the processes need to be replatformed, and what happens then?
Yeah, I think this is one of the main open challenges, and very at least explored, is when my processes are frequently changing. I'm doing migrations, for example, from S4 to S4HANA, and all these changes, if I have RPA implemented in place, my RPA implementations has to actually be updated. And this is one of the big challenges as our processes are changing. So recently, the field, as I said, of process mining has actually been improved, or has accelerated a lot on what we called more of the continuous improvement and continuous monitoring approach for my processes. A lot of it is around also predictive process mining and simulations, where a lot of it is my data is actually always feeding into my process mining tools, where we have ETL in place that are actually looking into those data and pulling them into process mining tools, understanding my processes, running simulations to test. For example, if I were to develop 5 bots to execute these steps, how would that impact my process, for example, throughput time for the process, or the outcome, or if there's any deadlock. So a lot of the field has evolved in that direction as well. This is where we are doing a lot of work on the continuous monitoring and discovery approach of my processes, because as we know, there's a lot of challenges, as you said, when we're moving between systems, when we're doing migrations, when our bots have to be re-implemented. If I switch from one tool to another, I have to re-implement most of my code for these automations, for example. So this is along the way where the technology has evolved a lot to help with those techniques and approaches. I hope that answered the questions. Or
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
right.
We have a question from the audience. How important is framing the problem properly to having a success of an RPA initiative?
Yes, that's actually a very, very important question. Same for research. We need to really frame our problem carefully in order to solve a problem over the next 4 years. So yeah, actually understanding exactly your automation strategy, or where you want it to, the problem of your processes, is very important. So automation probably does not work for all the different processes and all the different steps in the process, and not every automation will succeed. So it's not always solving a problem in processes by adding a bot to execute a step. In some cases, based on the problem and the analysis, you need to probably eliminate a step, or you need to probably add a new rule, a business rule, even maybe more of validation to avoid some errors. So not always RPA is a solution. And this is where framing the problem is actually important for the long run. When we deploy RPA in a production environment, and then bots were running, if there's one change in my process step, the bot might fail. So understanding my long-term changes and also how my processes will evolve over time, my system changes, is really critical to make sure your implementations are actually successful along the way.
Okay, we have some more questions here. Here's one. With ChatGPT and AI increasing in prominence, do you see that there's a threat or an opportunity to process mining and RPA?
Actually, just recently, there's a few already process mining tools that are actually embedding ChatGPT to understand basically how my processes, asking where can I, more on the analysis side, and how can I actually understand my processes, my throughput time, where is the best way to implement certain changes into my process. So there's already actually implementation in the space. I see there's going to bring a lot of the changes on the way we probably conduct research in the field as well, on how can we use such a technology to improve. A lot of it is also on building those processes, business process modules. So I already see a lot of the changes happening, and of course it's such an evolution into the technology.
Very good, thank you. Here's another question, but I'm not sure if it really applies to yourself or to our previous panel discussion. What skills are required from government when managing RPA initiatives, and what roles does government play in these initiatives?
I think a lot of the skill set requires a lot of the upskilling on the different like RPA tools and techniques. Also, if I'm coming more to use my approach that I discussed about using process mining and robotic process automations, a lot of the skill sets are required is on understanding my processes based on data. A lot of the data extractions, understanding where my data set for each process, mapping processes to the different data sets. A lot of the ETL work is actually required as well. So a deep dive into processes is very important for RPA implementations. And of course, depending on the tool that you're using, there is some sort of automation upskilling required for those. I think along the government, there's many applications that where RPA is actually being embedded. So making sure doing the automation for the right process and the right step is critical for the success. Otherwise, failures of these is very challenging, brings a lot of challenges to redo the work and so on, a lot of the troubleshooting. And I want to highlight the importance of monitoring my processes to make sure things are actually are going well, or processes are not failing, or steps are being actually executed properly. So this is a very important step to conduct. If you were to implement RPA, process mining techniques are very important on monitoring your end-to-end processes.
Very good, thank you. We have more questions. Is it fair to say that process mining is an outgrowth of time and motion studies? I really don't understand what that means. Maybe you do. Can data already captured from those programs be utilized by an RPA project?
I want to highlight that having the right data for process mining is a challenge. There are a lot of the data sets out in many different systems, especially if we're still looking at legacy systems. This is one of the main challenges, is extracting those data sets that are required for process mining. And on the RPA side as well, getting those user interaction logs that I discussed is also a big challenging problem. So it requires a lot of the data pre-processing. Also, the recording of employees' actions on the screen comes with a lot of security challenges as well, and a lot of questions about monitoring my employees on how they're executing a process. So a lot of work is actually still required in those fields to fill a lot of those gaps and solve the problems of the data, to have clean data, because having the right data is very important for my results. If my data does not reflect the processes in reality, or if it's missing data sets, this will actually, my insights will not be accurate and complete. This will have more impact on my analyses. And of course, if I base my analysis on not complete data sets or missing data sets, my implementations will not be probably correct, and that might lead into failures. So there's no perfect data. Of course, having some sort of data also is important. Sometimes we might start with 30% of data sets, and then we would require a lot of pre-processing techniques. I worked on a lot of those approach in my master's. I focused just on pre-processing clickstream event logs to clean those in order to better use and better generate process maps, because otherwise we'll generate the spaghetti process or a very messy process map. I think in one of my slides it was there. I worked on how can I build a clean process mining module that I can use for insights and analysis. So data is still a very challenging problem.
Excellent. So we've run out of questions. It's been a great presentation.
Thank
you very much. I don't know if you have any final thoughts that you want to share, or we can also.
I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I hope this was insightful. This is, as I said, still work in progress research. I'm only my second year, so still a lot of work to be done, and hopefully I will come up with a solution where we can embed it in many different departments, and will be useful for many different employees, and then of course organizations as well.
It sounds very promising, and there's a lot of benefits to be had. Well, thanks again, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to
Bye.
everyone else as well for attending. I'm just going to close it out here. Remember that there's some virtual and in-person things happening tomorrow, depending on what you've purchased as your ticket. So if you're going to be in person, I should see you there. And if you're going to be virtual, you'll see me there. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great end of the day. Bye.